I had always been fascinated by abandoned places, the allure of forgotten history, and the promise of untold stories waiting to be uncovered. So when I heard about the old St. Augustine Asylum, I couldn't resist. The asylum had been shut down in the 1970s, left to rot in the middle of nowhere, miles from the nearest town. Stories of its haunted halls and the terrible things that happened there were the stuff of local legend. One chilly autumn evening, I decided to explore it. Armed with a flashlight, a camera, and a backpack filled with supplies, I set out to document my adventure. The drive was long and uneventful, the road winding through dense forests that seemed to get darker with every mile. As I neared the asylum, a thick fog began to roll in, adding an eerie touch to the already unsettling landscape. The asylum loomed ahead, its decaying facade barely visible through the fog. The main entrance was chained shut, but I found a broken window around the side and clambered in. The moment I stepped inside, a sense of unease washed over me. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay, and every sound seemed amplified in the oppressive silence. I turned on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating the long, empty corridor ahead. The walls were covered in peeling paint and graffiti, remnants of previous visitors who had dared to venture inside. I took a deep breath and started walking, my footsteps echoing off the tiled floor. The first few rooms I explored were empty, filled only with broken furniture and scattered debris. I took some photos, documenting the eerie beauty of the place. But as I moved deeper into the asylum, the atmosphere began to change. The temperature dropped, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. I entered what must have been the patient wing. The doors to the rooms were all ajar, revealing small claustrophobic spaces. Some still had rusted beds and decaying mattresses. I imagined the lives that had been lived here, the suffering that had taken place within these walls. It was unsettling, but I pushed on, driven by curiosity and the need to capture the essence of this forgotten place. As I explored further, I found a staircase leading down to the basement. The air grew colder as I descended, and the light from my flashlight seemed to struggle against the darkness. At the bottom of the stairs, I found a long hallway with a series of heavy metal doors. This must have been where they kept the most dangerous patients, I thought, the ones they needed to isolate. I felt a sense of dread as I walked down the hallway. The doors were all closed, but one at the far end was slightly ajar. I approached it cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. In the center of the room was an old wooden chair, its restraints still attached. The walls were covered in strange symbols and scratches, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. I felt a sudden urge to leave, to get out of that basement and back into the relative safety of the upper floors. But as I turned to go, I heard a faint whisper. I froze, straining to listen. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, but I couldn't make out the words. It sounded like it was coming from behind one of the closed doors. Against my better judgment, I followed the sound. It led me to a door near the middle of the hallway. I hesitated, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. The whispering stopped abruptly as I touched the door. I pushed it open, the hinges groaning in protest. The room was dark, but as my flashlight swept across it, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, in the center of the room, was a figure. It was hunched over, its back to me. The figure was wrapped in what looked like a straitjacket, its head lolling to one side. I could hear it breathing, a slow, raspy sound that sent shivers down my spine. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. I raised my flashlight, trying to get a better look. The beam caught the figure's face and I gasped. It had no eyes, just empty sockets that seemed to stare right through me. Its mouth was twisted into a grotesque grin, teeth yellow and rotten. The figure began to move, slowly turning to face me. I stumbled back, dropping my flashlight. Darkness enveloped me and I fumbled to pick it up, my hands shaking. When I finally managed to turn the light back on, the figure was gone. The room was empty, but I could still hear that raspy breathing now coming from the hallway. Panic set in and I bolted from the room, running back down the hallway and up the stairs. I could hear footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate, as if something was following me. I reached the ground floor and didn't stop, sprinting down the corridor toward the broken window I had entered through. As I neared the window, I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. The figure from the basement was standing there, blocking my exit. Its head was tilted to one side, and it raised a hand, beckoning me to come closer. I backed away, my mind racing. There had to be another way out. I turned and ran in the opposite direction, my flashlight flickering as I moved. I found a side door and burst through it, emerging into the cold night air. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I fumbled with the keys, my hands trembling, and finally managed to get the door open. I jumped in, started the engine, and tore out of there, not daring to look back. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The fog seemed to close in around me, and every shadow looked like that faceless figure. I finally reached the main road and kept driving until I was back in the safety of my own neighborhood. I never went back to the asylum, but the memory of that night still haunts me. Sometimes in the dead of night I can still hear that raspy breathing, and I wonder if something followed me home. The abandoned places I once found so fascinating now fill me with dread. I learned the hard way that some doors are better left unopened, and some stories are better left untold.